AEW Revolution 2025. Let's start with the main event. Let's start with the most important thing because it absolutely sucked. So Jon Moxley versus Adam Copeland, or Cope as he likes to be called, for the World Heavyweight Championship. It headlined this show, and many people, including myself, thought, well, it was going to be Copeland's time. He was going to win the championship. This Death Riders storyline is horrific. No one likes it. Yet, they kept the title on Jon Moxley. This is what happened. So they go back and forth. We have seen everything on this show: blood, guts, chairs, near falls, everything. We get to this main event match and it's plotting, and Jon Moxley is just targeting the neck of Adam Copeland, and it's going on and on and on. It's a terrible match. And then we get to the finish and things start to pick up, and we're like, okay, Adam Copeland, he's making his comeback. All right, we're going to get a world title change right here. And Copeland, he hits 3 spears. Okay, we're going to get a new world champion. And then a man in a hoodie comes out and pulls out the referee. It's Christian Cage. He signs his contract for a championship match. He's a heel, by the way, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to do this, but I digress. It turns into a triple threat match. And what happens? Christian Cage hits the spear on Adam Copeland. Then he hits the kill switch on Adam Copeland. And then as he's about to go for the pinfall, what happens? But Jon Moxley grabs him and puts him in a bulldog choke, and he passes out. Jon Moxley retains the world championship. That in itself is horrible. Now, they did try to make up for this, as fans were literally upset. They were booing heavily. It was not a good time. And then Swerve Strickland, who became the #1 contender for the World Heavyweight title earlier in the night after beating Ricochet, then he came out and he laid out Moxley. So at least we got that. Look, I'm not mad that they didn't put the title on Copeland. Got no problem with that. I'm not mad that we're getting Swerve Strickland versus Jon Moxley, because if I had to take my pick, I would put the title on Swerve. What I am a little upset about is, you look at the matches on this card, whether it was Toni Storm versus Mariah May, MJF versus Hangman, or the Kyle Fletcher Will Osprey matches. Not only did those matches have more heat coming into this event, but they were just better matches. And if you're going to have a heel go over in such a lackluster way, you probably should have put on Toni Storm versus Mariah May in the main event, but they didn't do so. So that would be my criticism of the main event. It sucked, but at least we're getting Swerve. Got to start it off with a bang. It was MJF, it was Hangman Page, the best built feud going into this show, in my opinion, and I was glad to see that if they could not get the main event spot, that they would absolutely get the opener, because you know they were going to put on a performance. And what it was a brutal, yet gritty, yet in-ring psychology on point. MJF doing the cowardly act, Hangman Page trying to put him through as much damage as possible. It showed MJF's toughness. At one point, MJF hit a pile driver, or a tombstone, if you will, to Hangman Adam Page on a folded steel chair outside of the ring. Absolutely vicious. In the end, though, it was Hangman Page getting the win. He got the win because he hit the Deadeye, he hit Angel's Wings, which was absolutely nasty, and then put him away with the buckshot lariat. Tops to these two guys for going out there, performing at a very high level, and kicking off the main event. These guys are the pillars of this promotion. They are the glue that keeps this promotion going, and I'm hopeful that this feud has elevated their star powers even that higher. I am hopeful to see Hangman Adam Page go into a bigger feud next. I'm hopeful to see MJF go after the World Heavyweight Championship in the coming weeks and months. Hopefully double or nothing. They had a #1 contenders match here on the show. We'll get into that in a little bit more, but the sooner that MJF can become world champion, I think the better off AEW is going to be. Up next, it was Mercedes Moné defending the TBS Championship against Momo. This was a good match, but and I agreed with people on Twitter about this. there is a trend with Mercedes Moné's matches where they're very good. The matches themselves are good, the moveset is good, but the in-ring psychology is lacking because it's not very believable that anyone that is working with Mercedes can A, beat her, and more importantly, take away the TBS championship from her. That's something that they're going to need to do better on in terms of building up worthy contenders and challengers to make you believe, okay, this person can realistically dethrone Mercedes Moné, take away the TBS championship, something in which she desperately wants to hold on to. And if they cannot fix that problem, I think it's going to hurt her reign, and it's going to be a significant problem going forward. So they really need to. They tease getting Billy Starks involved. I don't see that being the answer. I think that's more of just another body for her to beat. So they need to clear that up and get really on top of that. The number one contendership between Swerve Strickland and Ricochet was everything that you would have hoped. This was a match that delivered on paper, and it had high expectations, and rightfully so, considering the caliber of talents in this match. But I will say this, it did feel like this should have been just saved for a Dynamite. It could have easily headlined a Dynamite event. And I think that's something that AEW should do a lot better of a job with, where they feel like they have to stack these pay-per-view cards to the highest of the highs. And I respect that and I appreciate that. But I also think you don't need 15 matches, including pre-show matches, with a lot that are just filler. And then by the time that you get to an end of a pay-per-view event, it just absolutely wears out the crowd by the time they get to the main event because they've seen everything. If we would just stop going 6 hours with these shows and just focus on, I don't know, 7 core matches, then I think these would be a lot better. But at the end of the day, Swerve Strickland is your number one contender. We don't know when the title match will happen, but hopefully it'll happen sooner rather than later. The Hurt Syndicate defended the tag team titles against the Outrunners and retained the AEW tag team titles. The Hurt Syndicate is one of the most over acts in AEW. It's one of the best acts in AEW, and the Outrunners were also in the same category. They're a really over act. I don't think they necessarily had the high list of ceilings, but they're a fun act to watch, and it's a throwback. It's different. Um, it's just everything that pro wrestling used to be in the 80s. And so it was a fun build-up. It was a fun match. It was nothing special by any means, but the Hurt Syndicate just continues to evolve, continue to get better, and continues to come across as two big-time stars. I'm very curious to see how that dynamic changes once Cedric Alexander, who I would assume is going to be coming in once his WWE 90-day non-compete clause expires sometime, in the next month or two. But regardless, this was very entertaining. Okada versus Brody King. This was an interesting match, and I felt like it showcased two of AEW's problems. One, Okada, who is one of the greatest in-ring workers ever, just flat. He's just flat in AEW. He's entertaining, but there's no substance. There's no reason to care whether he wins or cares if he loses. And Brody King feels like he has a real chance to be a singles guy. The fans are clearly behind him. He's got this new, barking kind of catchphrase going on that is getting over. The Continental Classic is just kind of a belt that's there. I don't think there's much prestige to it, but I also think that AEW could have utilized this moment and put over Brody King, put him over Okada, and had him win the championship, and that would have gave him something rather than nothing, which I felt like they did by having Okada just simply beat him and retain the championship. I mean, its caliber, was even mocking the fact that Okada rarely works these days. I don't know if you want to necessarily have that as one of your champions in that association. AEW Women's Champion Toni Storm and Mariah May went out there and put on one of the most violent, bloody, sick, twisted matches that you will see, both female and male. They absolutely went out there and crushed it. Any expectations for the Hollywood ending, I feel like they went far, far above it. They used chairs, chains, glass, tables, both women bloody, both women using the bloody high heel shoe. It was absolutely sick and twisted, and it was the perfect blow-off match. In the end, it was Tony Storm hitting the pile driver through a table. If you want a hardcore match, if you want a sick match, Tony Khan and AEW presented a sickos type match between Tony Storm and Mariah May that you may want to check out. Will Osprey and Kyle Fletcher put on one of the best steel cage matches, yet one of the most ridiculous matches you will ever see. They used screwdrivers as if they were knives. They were stabbing each other. It got to the point where, okay, this is not realistic. What are we doing? Why is the business getting to the where it is? And then they come back and they have an absolute incredible 5-star classic. An interesting match, a blow off to this. This is a feud that has helped make Kyle Fletcher into a star, and it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do on his own away from Osprey, and we'll see where Osprey goes from here as well.